Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show on RadioFreedom.us. I have on the line with me Jeff Berwick, who is editor-in-chief of the Dollar Vigilante. He is an anarcho-capitalist, a libertarian, a freedom fighter against mankind's two biggest enemies, the state and the central banks. He is CEO of TDV Media and Services and host of the popular video podcast Anarchast. He is a prominent speaker at many of the world's freedom, investment, and gold conferences, as well as regularly in the media, including CNBC, CNN, and Fox Business. His background in the financial markets actually dates back to his founding of Canada's largest financial website, stockhouse.com. In 1994, in the late 90s, the company expanded worldwide into 8 different countries and had 250 employees and a market capitalization of $240 million USD at the peak of the tech bubble. To this day, more than 1 million investors use stockhouse.com for investment information every month. So, Jeff, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me this evening. I really appreciate it. You know, we started watching videos of you doing speeches and interviews around the world, and I have to say, first off, that I was kind of jealous because you've been to so many different places and you've seen so many different things, and it seems like you're spreading the cause of liberty pretty much everywhere that you go.
Yeah, I'm trying to do my best, trying to sow the seeds of liberty all around the world. And a lot of my travels haven't all been related to spreading liberty or anything like that. I actually spent a number of years just trying to learn how the world worked. I spent about 5 years. I tried to sail around the world. I actually sunk my sailboat in El Salvador, and then I just kept going for another 4 or 5 years and went to about 100 countries just to see what's going on. And it's quite a bit different than what they tell you on the news.
What do you mean it's different than what they tell us on the news? Because in the news, I hear that just about every country other than the United States is filled with terrorists and shootings, and the United States is filled with terrorists and shootings, but that's okay because they've got that under control.
Yeah, that's the image they try to portray. That's for sure. I'm coming in from Acapulco, Mexico right now, which last year was the 4th most dangerous city on earth, according to some of these stats. But it's really not indicative of what's actually going on the ground on a lot of these places. There was some sort of a fight over the drug trade here over the last few years. It's mostly ended now, but it really didn't involve any normal people. It was mostly fights between certain gangs, and they weren't even in the city. They're hundreds of miles out, but they always said it was in Acapulco. So you really have to kind of see these things for yourself. And, when I go back to the U.S., I find it very dangerous. I'm always at risk of being kidnapped by people in blue uniforms or costumes with badges, magic badges that give them all kinds of rights to do whatever they want with you. And so I really prefer it in almost any other country outside of the U.S. There's very little chance of that happening almost anywhere else, except for in certain places like Canada and a lot of the Western countries. But if you go to so many different countries, the chance of a policeman even talking to you is almost zero. So it all depends on how you look at things. If you like that U.S. style of, oh, the police will protect us and the government will protect us, and they're always watching you and trying to protect you, even though they don't. But they don't protect you, that's for sure. But they're always harassing you and watching you. If you like that, then you might like the U.S. But I really don't like that at all.
Well, the thing is so are you saying that when you go to these other places, the police don't arrest you and kidnap you and throw you into cages?
No, I've never had that happen anywhere else in the world except for the U.S. I've been in handcuffs in the U.S. at least twice. I've been pulled over and, had my car searched or been searched or been just accosted hundreds of times. I spent about a year living in L.A. and just almost every day you just have someone accosting you. And a lot of these other places. Here in Mexico, I'll give you an example. They've only tried to pull me over twice in the 5 years that I've lived here. And the first time I basically just told them off and they left. And the second time was just recently. They tried to, I was on my scooter with no license, no registration, and no helmet. And they put on their lights and the siren behind me. And I just started shouting at them, like, get out of here, you criminals. And they drove away.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow. That is, you know what? That could be one of the greatest stories that I've ever heard. So the only place that you've really been kidnapped by the police is in the U.S. and everywhere else, they just kind of leave people alone and let them live their lives. I mean, that's kind of the antithesis of what I've heard.
Yeah, we have a project we're starting in Chile called Gulf Chile, and down there, there's a oceanside resort called Viña del Mar that I spend a lot of time in. It's very close to Gulch, and I spent about 5 days there recently. I didn't see one cop the entire time I was there. There are some police in Chile, but they're usually in these two-cylinder cars, and they wear these they look like hotel concierge uniforms, and they actually are quite friendly. They actually help people and go around. And I even saw one go up to a person recently and said, "You look lost. Do you need some help?" and help them find their way. And so that's it's quite a bit different. The U.S. is just the worst police state on earth. The only country that I can think of, or maybe two that I could think of, or three actually now that I think of it, is North Korea, Belarus, and Cuba. But other than that, the U.S. is right up there, right with them as far as police in your face, constantly aggressing against you.
Wow. You know, I think it's frustrating because so many people just kind of take they take the U.S.'s word for it, and they acknowledge that they claim, you know, all right, the U.S. is the land of the free, and our government is the best, and when you look and do U.S. news-based sources and searches for these countries and what it's like in these countries, all you see is nothing but shootings and destruction, and maybe they want us to see that. Maybe that's all they want us to see.
It's also how they portray it, because I'll give you some examples. In Mexico, there's a lot of problems been caused by the U.S. government and its war on people, which they call war on drugs. And down here, they just don't put up with the police or government. So if the government, with all backed by U.S. taxpayer dollar funded arms and bulletproof vests and all this and vehicles, if they come into a place where some people are trying to voluntarily trade in plants like marijuana, and they actually kill somebody or shoot up a house or something, the whole town will go down to the police station and cut all their heads off and light the station on fire. And so that will go into the news in the U.S. as, oh, it's chaos, it's anarchy in Mexico. And they're kind of right. It is kind of like anarchy, except for there is government. There wouldn't be any of these problems if there was no government. But people here just don't put up with government the way they do in the U.S.
You know what? That sounds that actually sounds kind of fantastic. I've seen so many activists in the United States who get arrested and thrown into cages, and people just kind of they sit back and they let it happen, and they sit back and they accept it, and it's very, very frustrating, I think, to see all these people thrown into cages for basically just speaking against their government and for being honest and open and upfront about what's happening around them. And now, would you say that you can still speak out and speak up against corruption and the government in these countries, or do you find yourself keeping quiet?
Every country's different. There's definitely a lot of, it's so funny when you hear Americans say there's free speech in the U.S. Are we going to a commercial? Is that why there's...
Yes, there is actually. So if you could hold on for just one moment, the Angel Clark Show will return. More with Jeff Berwick on RadioFreedom.us.
This is the Angel Clark Show.
Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show on RadioFreedom.us. I have on the line with me Jeff Berwick from the Dollar Vigilante. And Jeff, I want to thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate it. And I think I want to switch gears a little bit now. And I think that I would like to talk about the Silk Road, because the alleged owner of the Silk Road has just been found. And so there are, I think, a lot of repercussions that are going to happen here. And I've seen a little bit of it, but I think that the repercussions are going to be kind of different than what the government expects, because we live in a world with the internet and technology. And so what happens when you shut one thing down is others pop up in its place. But so for what do you think are the repercussions, the immediate repercussions for Bitcoin because of the Silk Road?
Yes, I've been following that very closely. I'm very interested in it. I'm a big fan of the Silk Road, or I was a fan of the Silk Road. And a lot of people this week have been talking about the U.S. government so-called shutdown, which is almost all political theater. Yeah. But this was the shutdown that was important to me this week, because they took down one of the top, or the top probably, marketplace for totally anonymous transactions on the internet. Actually, not even totally on the internet, on something called the dark net. And it was It was fantastic. You could get anything you want, and no one knew who you were. You could pay through bitcoins, and no one could find out. If you're careful, you could totally anonymize yourself, and it was a totally free market, and it was beautiful. It was totally functioning perfectly. But the U.S. government, of course, saw that as a threat. They can't allow freedom in the U.S., and they've somehow managed to get the person. And actually, this person was a little bit. They didn't. They weren't too cautious enough, and they actually got him through some emails and things like that. It wasn't actually shutting down the actual darknet, which you really can't do. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. So a lot of people have been saying that, oh, this is going to cause Bitcoin to collapse because that's what a lot of people were using Bitcoins for, but that's not really the case. This total Silk Road Bitcoin traffic was just a small part of all the Bitcoin traffic out there. And the really important thing to state here is that they can't shut down the darknet. And just because they found the guy who was running Silk Road and shut him down, in his wake, 1,000 others will start up. They cannot stop this. They're going to keep trying to stop it. They won't be able to, and that's the beautiful thing about the internet and technology is that you can't use guns anymore like you used to. Most things now are virtual, and in the old days, you used to be able to use guns and wars and police and laws and taxes and all those sort of things. But now it's all turning away from that. We're moving into a much better world where it's going to be much more peaceful and prosperous, and there will be actual free trade, and you can avoid all of these state gun-imposed rules and regulations. And so I really don't see the shutting down of Silk Road as being a big blow to either Bitcoin or free markets on the internet. I think it's actually going to really make a lot of people realize that this is possible. And a lot of people will be rushing to fill the space left by the Silk Road. And I encourage a lot of people to look into it. I think this is a huge entrepreneurial thing to do at this moment in time, is to get on these dark nets, set up markets, set up all kinds of ways that people can transact, set up Bitcoin insurance companies, Bitcoin banks, all kinds of things. This is a huge money-making opportunity. And by money, I mean Bitcoin, which is money. And people just should be really getting out there and trying to get into it as much as possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, right now there's an opening for the right person with the right group to kind of step in and take the place of the Silk Road. And I've seen that there are some sites out there that are already and you know, even before the Silk Road went down, that were doing the same kind of thing. So it's a great chance for them to step up and take their organization to that next level as well. Now, did you happen to see some of the posts that were supposedly by the Silk Road founder online, Ross? I believe his last name is pronounced Albrecht, but I saw quite a few posts that were supposedly made by him. There was one on LinkedIn and there was one on Facebook, and I had never seen them before, obviously, because I had no clue who this guy was. But the one LinkedIn post was it was really fantastic. It was, basically a short stint about how the Silk Road was founded so that he could do kind of an economic experiment to show that you don't need coercion and you don't need force to have a transaction.
Yeah, I've read a lot of his quotes in the last few days, and so many of them are really great quotes. He's a real freedom fighter. He's a true anarchist. What he was building there was great, and it's sad that once again, and he got entrapped by the U.S. government again, and the FBI. They actually entrapped him into a person was trying to, and this is all quite conjectural, but this is what we're hearing, is that a person was blackmailing him. He knew who he was, and he was going to shut down Silk Road and expose all his clients. And Dread Paul Roberts was very upset about this because he considers the sorry, I can't say that word very well, anonymity of his clients to be paramount. And so the FBI came in and actually, again, trapped them, just like they do with a lot of the so-called terrorists. They actually get them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do, and then they trap them. And I guess they're saying that he was trying to have this person killed. And that's a whole other topic that we can talk about. But in a black market where you're not allowed to use things like courts or police or laws or anything like that, and I don't think any of those things should be run by the government. government. But when you're driven underground, those are the only options. And just like the TV show Breaking Bad, when you can't have no other way to have dispute resolution because you've been driven underground by the government, the only thing you can do is to use violence against people. And that's so the government actually causes all this drug violence and all sorts of violence because they're making people do things, subterfuge, that all they want to do is have voluntary transactions. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a crime in my mind. But of course, in the government's mind, it is. They make up all kinds of laws and try to put as many people in cages as possible.
You know, when it comes to this, and I've heard that he's now being charged for trying to have someone killed. I saw that. When it comes to that, when I compare that charge against the statements that I read that he supposedly wrote, that it seems to me like it's two completely different people. And so I'll be honest with you. I think the government's full of it. I absolutely do. I need to see actual proof that this happened other than just, a maybe or a nod of a head. I would need to see actual proof, because it seems to me that someone that wants to prove that you can have a world without violence, a world without coercion, that person wouldn't try to have someone killed. But we have to step away for just a moment. The Angel Clark Show will return. More with Jeff Berwick, radiofreedom.us.
Class isn't over. It's just begun.
This is the Angel Clark Show. Nobody.
Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show on radiofreedom.us. We have on the line with us Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante. The dollarvigilante.com is the website. And we are talking a little bit about the Silk Road and Bitcoin and the United States in particular. And so, Jeff, I'd like to thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate it. And when it comes to Bitcoin, do you see Bitcoin as being a positive currency of the future, or is it just do you think it's a fad?
Well, I have to tell you, I don't think it's a fad. I definitely don't think it's a fad. Of course, Bitcoin came out in 2009. I didn't hear about it until 2011 when it was around $3. And then a lot of people started to really catch on around 2011. And then in this last, what happened in Cyprus earlier this year, where all the banks shut down and the government actually just stole half of everyone's money out of their bank accounts, that really woke people up to all the problems and dangers of the current financial and monetary and banking system. And they're all going to collapse. It will happen in the US as well. So a lot of people started moving into Bitcoin at that time. And I was actually talking about opening a Bitcoin ATM in Cyprus. And during that period, it went from $35 before Cyprus to a peak of almost $250. And that's all just because of supply and demand. So if Bitcoin continues to be taken up and used by more and more people, it will continue to rise in price versus the US dollar. And if it doesn't, then it will go down. It's pure supply and demand. But we're seeing so many people all around the world starting to pick up this currency. In a lot of places like Argentina, where they have major capital controls right now, Venezuela, in Argentina, there's so many businesses that accept Bitcoin now, including car rentals, hotels. So it's starting to become a real currency. And other places as well, like Iran, and other places that don't even have major currency controls at the moment, but they will, like Germany. In Berlin, it's becoming a total Bitcoin economy. And so I don't think this thing's going away at all. And if it does get picked up, and if the people around the world start using it as a currency, I've done the math on this, Bitcoin will go to $1 million a Bitcoin. And that's partly because the dollar will be almost worthless at that moment in time. But also the Bitcoin, just the demand, the value of Bitcoins will just continue to rise. It's all purely supply and demand.
Yeah, I have to be honest. We've been kicking ourselves here over the Bitcoin rise because we first found out about Bitcoin when I think the value was maybe 85 cents. So we have one friend who invested quite heavily when it was 50 cents per Bitcoin. But so and actually we had a few physical Bitcoin as well. We bought in some when it was around $8 and had physical Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin was at its peak, we were selling physical Bitcoins for like $1,200 a piece on eBay. Like people were just scooping them up because they, I think a lot of people, and I myself do with this too. I get caught on the concept of physical currency, right? Something that you can hold in your hand. And I wish that I had invested in Bitcoin earlier, but it's amazing to see this cyber currency, this cryptocurrency, just kind of pop up and see people embrace it. And I think it says a lot for the next generation of people, because the people that are investing in Bitcoin, a lot of them are people who have realized that the government has too much control of the money. And I think a lot of it has to do with having access to the internet and having access to technology and researching it. And I feel like the next generation of people, some of them are going to be some of the brightest people that we've seen in quite a while, because they're not going to buy, the government hype, the government load of crap that they throw out at us.
Yeah, well, the younger people are really seeing the bad sides of government. Of course, the older people, the baby boomers, they took advantage of a lot of the government's theft in the past. So what I call socialist insecurity or social security is just a Ponzi scheme where the first people in get the money out first and then it all collapses. And so you see young people around the world, especially in the US, that are just waking up and realizing I was born with $64,000 of federal government debt already put onto me. All the economy is going completely being destroyed, and it'll get much, much worse, believe me. So they can't even get jobs. If they do, the jobs don't pay much because of the inflations of the Federal Reserve. So the younger people are seeing nothing good about government. And then they try to drive around and they try to drink a beer when they're 18 years old, and they get kidnapped and thrown into a cage and convicted of crimes, and then they can't get a job again. So the young people are really starting to be the ones that are really waking up now, and are starting to realize this system is not for me. It's not trying to help me. If anything, it's a huge drag on myself, and it offers nothing to me. Certainly when a person who's 20 years old today, they're not going to get Social Security when they're 65. Social insecurity will collapse in the next few years. So people are realizing this, and thankfully there is a lot of free market private options out there, and a lot of people are really gravitating to it, like Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite pleased actually, and I think as you said, someone who's in their 20s is not going to get Social Security, and I've seen a lot of people who are kind of waking up, and I see the people who are my parents and my grandparents say, well, if you want to change things, you have to work within the system, and it's you did that for 30 years. 30 years you worked within the. Have you changed anything? Are you even getting taxed just 1% less? Just 1%? No, because the way the system works is the Republicans want to tax you at 36% and the Democrats want to tax you at 33%. And either way, we're still talking about 30% of your money being stolen by the government to build some crappy roads. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. So I've seen a lot of people who just they're very, very frustrated by it, and I don't think that they're going to take it. I think that has a lot to do with the Bitcoin being in such high demand and the giant jump in its value, because people are realizing that it's not just the US dollar that's crap. I mean, just about all of the currencies they're kind of the same.
Yeah, that's what I write about at the Dollar Vigilante, is the entire Western financial and monetary system is all in a state of collapse, and it will collapse. What we saw in Cyprus will happen throughout Europe. It'll probably happen in Italy next. It'll probably happen in Spain after that. So Cyprus was a small case. That was just a small little island. Of course, it was a bit of an offshore banking center for Russians as well. But when it starts to become bigger countries, and you look at Japan's a disaster. It bought into this Western-style central banking and Keynesian economics. And the central bank, of Japan a few months ago said they're going to devalue the yen by 50%. They're going to double the money supply in the next 2 years. That's almost in itself hyperinflation. So the yen will get destroyed. They have 250% plus debt to GDP. There's no way to pay it back. Very aging population. So it's going to collapse. And you can imagine if Japan collapses or the yen collapses, what that will do for Bitcoin. And I really recommend to people just to get into Bitcoin now, so at least you have options as all these things start to fall apart. Because once those bank machines stop working, or if the dollar just gets hyperinflated to the point where it's worthless, you want to already have moved to this sort of a free private economy and be in a position to still have your assets and still be liquid and still be able to move things around easily, because bank accounts, especially with what the U.S. government's doing, they're doing something called FATCA, which comes into effect next year in July. And that will make it so no American will be able to open a bank account anywhere outside of the U.S. So,
all right, hold on to that thought for just a moment, Jeff. We have to step away. The Angel Clark Show will return. More with Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante, on radiofreedom.us.
For all those looking to kick the habit of mommy and daddy government.
This is the Angel Clark Show.
Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show on radiofreedom.us. I've just been reminded in the chat room, I totally flaked today. I absolutely did. This is Thursday. We normally do the Liberty Train on Thursday. So I should have been saying choo-choo at the beginning of every segment with our guest, but I forgot. And for that, I apologize. So it is Thursday. It's the Liberty Train. Choo-choo. And I have on the line with me Jeff Berwick of the Dollar Vigilante. DollarVigilante.com is the website. But before we get back to him, I want to remind you, my new website is doing fantastic, and I want you to go to it. There's a lot that I didn't get to discuss today. So go to noarmycanstopanidea.com, scroll down, and click on the box that says Show Prep. And there you will find everything I wanted to talk about, but I didn't because I got distracted talking about allergy-free cookies. Then also go to the Angel Clark Show fan page on Facebook, facebook.com/Angel Clark Show, and we have the Liberty Busting Loose Rawr contest. So right now the question is, describe Congress with a song title, and the comment that has the most likes by October 16th will win a prize. So go check it out. Now, Jeff, I want to thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate it. And before we stepped away, you were telling us about a government program called FATCA. What exactly is that?
yeah, not a lot of people have heard of it because they don't put this stuff out on the media in the US, but it's actually a massive thing. It's called the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, and they've been trying to institute it for a few years, but it's really hard to do. And what they're trying to do is get every single bank in the world to adhere to US government regulations. And what this has done is made it so almost every bank in the world has decided they don't want to deal with Americans. It's just too much trouble. They have the FBI and the CIA and everyone watching everything they do. It's just not worth their trouble. And the U.S. is becoming such a small economy in the grand scheme of things in the world, and it's going down and down every year, that it's not really a big issue to a lot of these places just to forget about even having Americans as clients. So this is actually a form of capital controls, and it's coming into effect next year. And the effect of it is if you do have a bank account outside of the U.S., by July of next year, that bank is supposed to file documents with the U.S. government. And if they don't, there are massive fines, or they can even shut down the bank using force. So this will effectively close off people from being able to get their money outside of the U.S. if they're Americans. And so a lot of things that we talk about is helping people to get their money out now before it's too late, and even getting things like a foreign passport in a different country that has no tax or a very low tax, and just giving up your U.S. passport is becoming a complete police state, surveillance state, tax. They're just taking everything they can now, and it's going to get worse and worse as this government debacle continues to collapse in debt.
Wait, did you say that there are countries where you don't have to pay taxes?
Oh, yes, of course. There's many.
Oh, why do I not know about this? Why am I not there right now? No taxes? Wait, do they have roads?
Yeah, they still have roads. It's amazing. I don't know how they can do it.
Somehow the roads just magically appear, right? Now, speaking of roads, by the way, government shutdown, it's something that it's so frustrating because it's not actually a shutdown, right? Like, this isn't a government shutdown. It's a furloughing 800,000 employees. And what kind of company, private sector company, would have 800,000 employees that they can furlough because they're not necessary employees? I mean, that's just ridiculous in itself. But some people act like
they call in the private market, they call non-essential employees unemployed. Floyd.
Right? Yes, exactly. But so some people have been acting like it's the end of the world, like the roads would just disappear and the schools would disappear and everything would just stop and in case of government shutdown. And that's not the case.
Well, it actually would be sort of the case in some cases if they did shut down. But like you said, they're not shutting down at all. All they're trying to do is the biggest things they've shut down are some national parks. And I don't know if you know, but you can just walk right past that closed sign and just go into the park. So it's all very, they're just trying to make people feel like, oh, look, all these problems are going to happen if we don't have government. The biggest, John McCain said today that this is a massive, he called it an apocalypse, this shutdown. And he said,
an apocalypse?
Biggest,
really?
Yeah. And he was actually responding to a question about the Air Force and Navy football game this weekend is going to be canceled. And he said this will be the moment that everyone remembers about this shutdown, how terrible it was. And he was serious.
A sporting event, a government-sponsored sporting event being canceled is the apocalypse. That's good to know.
And not to mention that football game is always sold out. It's usually 34,000 people paying an average ticket price of about $40, which would make about $1.2 million in profit. So it's actually ludicrous to actually shut something like that down. But they're trying to just make people think, oh my God, we're not going to have football without government. This is the kind of crazy stuff they're trying to pass.
We're not going to have football without government. Well, and I saw a comment by Harry Reid where he compared the Republicans being upset over Obamacare to him being upset in the past, mind you, about the Iraqi war. Like he was saying how he used to stay up late at night to gut-wrenching, worrying about the Iraqi war. Used to, right? Not anymore, because in his eyes, the Iraq war is over. But it's amazing how politicians use these terms to compare not having a football game to the apocalypse, or to compare, the Obamacare to hundreds of thousands of people dying. It's just, it's pretty upsetting, actually.
Oh, I can't believe anyone listens to them. But actually, Harry Reid admitted to being a murderer with that statement, because he was fighting with John Boehner, saying, hey, listen, when you guys wanted your Iraq war, I could have stopped it, but I didn't, because you guys had the president in power. And so you guys shouldn't stop my president now from instituting a socialized, horrible medical care system. And what he actually admitted when he said that was he could have stopped the Iraq war, which was millions of people were killed and destroyed, and he didn't, just to play nice, which is actually an admission I think that people should be paying attention to. He could have actually stopped it and didn't, and I think that it's a crime. It's a crime against humanity. I
never made that connection. Not once did I make that connection. You are absolutely right. Oh my goodness. So is it like Nuremberg trial time, or because I know that they have said that certain people are free and clear from any kind of guilt from what happened based on the Iraq war, but was he one of them?
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I don't think we're going to have Nuremberg trials, because most of the world is all political and they're all tied in, and they don't want to see their president of Russia wouldn't want to see Obama get hung, because he knows he'd be next for the things he's done in Chechnya and things like that. So I think the only way that we can defeat these people is just to ignore them and just stop paying taxes, and just to actually get out of the U.S. if you can, and let them all just implode. And these people just go off into the night, and they'll probably kill themselves once they lose all their power anyway, since that's all they really care about.
Yeah, well, there may be something to that, actually. There may be something to that. Now, for people who are interested, I believe you said you were setting up a few different places where people could go if they want to leave the country. Do you want to share websites and whatnot?
Sure. I'm here in Acapulco right now. We have some condos here that a lot of libertarian people have been buying and all living in one building together. It's called Aca Condos. That's just acacondos.com. And then we're actually, I'm working with some people on developing a large real estate project in Chile called Gulch Chile, after Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And it's a totally libertarian community in a very much freer country. Chile is much more free and much more prosperous. The economy is booming down there because they don't have a lot of rules and regulations.
All right. Well, everyone, check those out if you have the chance. Also, the website is dollarvigilante.com. Jeff Berwick, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I really appreciate you coming on. Keep up the awesome work. The Angel Clark Show will return tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. Until that time, remember, no army can stop an idea whose time has come.
This is the Angel Clark Show.